Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session around what do clients want as a part of CLI and ALPNA Innovation Week. So first of all, I wanted to start by introducing our panel. We've got Mel, Justine, Carl and myself. And we've just seen that there's some amazing people that have joined us from all over the world. So welcome to all of our global and local guests. I'm going to start with introducing my first faculty member, Mel. Mel, do you want to say a few things about yourself to the crowd of people from all around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm on the panel as a little bit of intruder. I feel like we've got some absolute experts and live and breathe and the real thought leaders in this space. And I'm a little bit of the customer in the customer experience on the panel. So I'm an in-house lawyer. I do procure and buy all types of legal services across a whole number of vendors from small, boutique, big law, global, and legal tech as well. And then also associated with my role, I buy and I work with a variety of professional services, auditors, governance, share registries. So my experience is vast and broad, and I'm hoping to bring some actionable tips from the client's point of view here. And for me, as an in-house lawyer, I'm that interface between the outside world and the clients or my clients within the company, salespeople, executives, the finance team, marketing team, a whole array. And anything that can help me translate from the outside to the inside is just gold, and that's what I'm always looking for. So thank you for having me, and hopefully can share some words of wisdom.
Excellent. Welcome, Mel. And then next on our panel is the delightful Justine. Welcome.
How are you going?
How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And so, Justine, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Look, I feel like I'm also a bit of an outsider in the respect that my background is corporate and financial communication. I've been doing that for 22 years in agency and in-house. But so this is kind of part of my first foray into the legal sector. But I do feel there is a large bag, which I call my Mary Poppins bag of goodies that I feel that I can bring to the conversation in terms of what has worked in other industries or in other sectors that might work well in or for the legal industry.
Yeah, excellent. And then Carl, Mr. Carl White, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, sir.
You're based in sunny Melbourne?
Yep, based in a very warm 34-degree and humid Melbourne this afternoon, which is hot for us. Look, I mean, what's great already to see is this kind of the blend of backgrounds from everyone who's coming to the session this afternoon, and I guess I'll add to that as well. I mean, you can see a little bit about where I've been and what I've been doing in law there, but I guess the theatre perspective is actually quite an important one for me. It's in the way that's played out in my kind of legal world, working with law firms. This idea that we're kind of auditioning for the role of service provider. That as well, when we're working with clients, that the curtain is up, that we are putting on that show, and that we're all a part of that theatre production, no matter what role or function you play within a legal organisation. So I think that's actually a really interesting and powerful parallel when it comes to the client's experience. And it's one I'll probably talk a little bit more about in terms of how that, what form that's kind of taken in the client experience that we've had working in law.
Yeah, amazing. And look, I think it's interesting. I'm sure we'll come to it later, but I really like this idea that this notion that client experience and the notion of organisations needing to perform in this new world and what that means across, all of those behind the scenes functions, but then of course the, very visible front of house performance aspects as well. So I think we can definitely pick that up. And then finally, a little bit about myself. My name is Wilbury. I'm a management consultant, and it also seems that I'm wearing the same jacket as in my headshot. So that's it's consistency. Yeah, I'm consistently on brand. Thanks, Justine. But I think from my point of view, just to let you know, I work with a number of professional services organisations and startups around business strategy, sort of transformation, data, and change management. And so I think, hopefully what I'll bring is some of the experience around working with some of the clients that I have around the work that they've been doing to improve their client experience and what that looks like. And I think we've been talking a lot, which we'll touch on in just a second as well, the changes that have been impacted given the one and only COVID-19 from last year. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So just to kick things off, Mel, I'm going to start with you, just to sort of set the scene for everyone. Can you tell us what has been your most recent, what's been the best customer experience that you've had recently?
Okay, this is a weird one, but it's skincare and buying, not professional services, but buying skincare, which is something that a lot of us take really seriously. So for me, the process of buying skincare, specifically from a brand called Go2, from start to finish is phenomenal, because I aligned with the brand's values, or they aligned with mine, or at least appeared to, on social media, and had some incredible targeted ads that they hooked me on Instagram. Went through and everything was frictionless in terms of the buying process through the Instagram platform. Through to the shipping was free, added on at the end. It arrived, within 2 days, and it was beautifully presented and had some recyclable kind of packaging to it, which is an element that I really like. And then at the shipping process, I was getting updates by text as well throughout. So the product itself was fantastic, but the process kind of the nurturing, going through liking, knowing, and then trusting to buying, it all happened pretty quickly, because they were spot on with their, I suppose, seeing me as their ideal client and really understanding what I was looking for in that product. And they got me. So yeah, that was such a great experience, and it was the first one that came to mind when you asked this question, even though it's not quite. No,
that's fine. And then Justine, what about yourself?
Actually, it's quite at the forefront in terms of customer experience and engagement. There is a local bar around a restaurant near where I am. It was only recently opened, and look, they had the unfortunate experience of opening during COVID. I mean, that is a really tough market to have to try and crack. And I actually found it a really great experience. So just around the corner, I was first engaged with them through, again, Instagram marketing. So showing that they had been really targeting their local area online, because obviously they couldn't really engage with people and hand out flyers in the street. But, so there was a very heavy presence through Instagram, but also I think they made a real effort that when I did walk around the area with my dog, that they really came up and engaged with me and talked with me about what I was interested in, what my flavours were, what I was wanting to sort of see from the venue itself. And then once they did open, they've just gone from strength to strength. They've really made sure they knew the local area. They know everyone by name. They know everyone's dog by name. So I think it's really important when I look at that customer experience that I had from them. They engaged me digitally first and really hooked me in. And then they really made a lot of effort to get to know who I was, what my interests were, and then they have really continued with their touch points since then. So every time we go there, they make a real effort to make us feel welcome. So I think as a customer experience, that was something I think we could all take a lesson from.
Yeah, great. And look, I think for all those people who are watching us, you'll probably see that we use the word customer experience and client experience interchangeably throughout this session. So just bear that in mind. If we talk about customer, in this case, we're probably referring to client as well. All of our expectations around client experience have changed, and they are absolutely affected by interactions within our own life. So, you know, if Mel has an experience with a skincare brand who manages to, you know, speak to her in the channel that she wants to be spoken to and get her products when they said she would and communicate effectively across the way, her expectation of that carries over into her day job. And then I think what becomes interesting is, I guess, for all the people that are watching, to start to consider, I guess, how your own clients' expectations are being shaped by what's happening in their own personal worlds. Because I think, you know, if I can manage to get, you know, alcohol delivered in, you know, the next day or the same day with the same time, and I get a text message to let me know, then, you know, I would then have the expectation, if I want to book an appointment with one of my legal team, that I would expect that same level of service from them. And I think that similarity is definitely something that we're seeing.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that and say that it's about the ease of customer engagement. You know, you have to make life so easy for your customer, because basically there is, no matter what industry you're in, there'll be 5 other competitors after that same client or customer. So why would I go with someone for whom even that engagement with you was even slightly hard? I'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that ease of customer engagement, I mean, that could almost be considered a service basic. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not suggesting actually it's, you know, easy to do, but it you know, for customers, that's a service basic, you know, ease of access and accessibility. And you know, just getting those basics right can be, you know, an organization's biggest differentiator if they're consistently delivered, which I think is really interesting. And, you know, it'll be the same with B2B as private client or any kind of aspect of law. That concept.
Yeah, great. Yep. I'm going to keep us moving along now. We wanted to share with you a slightly random opening chart for a presentation that's around client experience. But Carl and I were talking about this, and Carl, maybe you can jump in if I don't do the story justice. But when we were talking about what we think is the beginnings of outstanding client experience, this is, I guess, the before shot of a very clinical hospital scanning sort of activity. And what I think is tremendously interesting is, if you look at this is the same medical process, but as we say here, an entirely different customer experience. So you see here that the little girl is hopefully happy. She's smiling. That's the first part. The sort of very clinical medical device is shrouded in, you know, a sort of ship infrastructure. So the actual medical device looks the same, but the overall experience, hopefully for the customer, is vastly different in that she's hopefully engaged. There's hopefully some headphones there that are going to, you know, play some relaxing music. So as she goes through this quite traumatic experience, she's as calm as she can be. And I think when we're setting up this sort of workshop today, it felt like this was a good starting point to sort of prompt everyone to think about what is the version of, you know, the SS Rochester experience for your clients when it comes to your own firms and your own services. Because I think when we see this is an interesting jumping off point in terms of, you know, the way that those within legal services should start to consider their own experience and how it might need to evolve. So what we're going to do today, for those of you that are watching along, we've broken the workshop down into 5 broad questions. And so each one of us on the panel is going to predominantly lean one of those questions. We're then going to have hopefully time for a broad Q&A at the end. And so these are the questions that we're going to, I guess, talk to you in a little bit more detail as we go through the workshop. And we also have a number of polls set up as we go through. So Fiona is very kindly going to help us manage all that process. And I guess what we wanted to do is just start off by actually defining what client or customer experience is. And I think what's interesting is this notion of when we start to break it down, I've just picked out some key words here, but it's this combination of both internal and external components. So the internal is where we talk about those sort of things that we know. So it's also direct and indirect content. But I think the thing is that we start to think about is that it's also this notion of unplanned encounters. So I guess what we wanted to put this definition up front is just sort of challenge everyone to start to think about what is both the things that they traditionally think about when it comes to client experience, website, the way that, communication might go out, external marketing, but also it's actually much deeper than that. And it's actually every touch point that a potential client has with your brand. So it's the person that greets them when they come into your foyer. It's the way that the Zoom meeting room works or doesn't work when they come to join your virtual meetings. It's every element of that touch point really starts to make up a sort of full client experience. And I think, some of the work that Carl does is start to, really consider what is the role for each one of those channels and how can we be clear about elevating and enhancing those moments across that complete customer journey. Now, our first poll, just to kick everyone off, how much impact can your increasing client experience have on the bottom line of your firm? So you've got 3 options. 1, not very much. 2, or B, a little. Or C, a lot. And we could pretend to be singing while people start to vote. But I think as we start to see these results come in, I think what I wanted to share, and it'll be interesting to see what our workshop panelists are actually showing as well. But according to some recent research from our friends at Forrester, this was some research that looked at shareholders' returns over 2007 to 2009. And what they started to find is that those returns where customer experience became more important led to an increase of 3 times customer returns for shareholders, 3 times higher returns for shareholders. So that's a pretty big number when you start to look at that, 3 times returns just for starting to think about how your customers are interacted. So, for those of you that are watching, this starts to show the real bottom line benefit of spending some time and actually working through this, because it's very important. And it looks by the sound of it, thanks Fiona, that the majority of people have agreed with that statement. So that's our first little starting point. What I just wanted to share is, I guess, 5 essential components for client or customer experience. So this notion of qual and quant research, journey mapping and experience design, which is obviously where Carl's experience comes in, employee training and engagement, a continuous client feedback loop, which Mel and Justine talk about, and then also the notion of technology empowerment. And then what we've just put here is some thoughts around the sorts of things that you want to start to consider for each of these components of client experience. And we'll go into these into a bit more detail. The other thing that we wanted to talk about, and we'll go into a little bit more detail with this, is how to deliver outstanding client experience in a post-COVID world. So there's no doubt that last year was an interesting year, to say the least, somewhat exhausting for everyone. I think from those that I've spoken to, a lot of people within the legal services industry actually had quite a good year last year. So it was interesting that in a world that was in flux, for some of those within professional services, there's actually been quite positive results from a commercial point of view. But I think when we talk about the impacts that inform client experience, then there's some things that we definitely want to talk about. And this notion that, we quite like this notion that we're out of the valley of despair now. Thank goodness we're on that upward climb. And we're now in this sort of acceptance and commitment about what to do next. Right, Justine. Now I'm going to hand the virtual microphone over to you.
Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to try and drive for you. So if I go slow or you need to go back, please feel free to yell.
Okay, sure thing. Look, as I said, look, I come from a non-legal background. So basically, I'm looking from the standpoint of what can I take or learn from other industries and bring that into what I'm doing here at Nexus. But, you know, we've already talked about it earlier. Our clients' everyday experiences really do frame what their expectations are across the board. And I think one of the things I found interesting coming into the legal sphere was that basically a lot of the client engagement or customer engagement that we have is very transactional. It's very one-off. You know, I come to you or they come to me to fix an issue, and there could be a considerable amount of time between the next engagement. So that really makes it quite difficult to maintain customer engagement. And I think that these are very significant and unique challenges to the legal industry. So we should sort of just frame that right there. And look, again, across all the different disciplines of law, across all the different types of law firms, I tried to think of what are the commonalities between what all clients are looking for. And basically, I kind of boiled down to 4 points. It was one, they're looking for resolution of their legal matter, looking for confidence in account care. So they want not just the delivery of legal expertise, they want to know that as a client, they're being managed well. And they want clarity about the journey ahead. They want to have an explanation of what are the legal costs, what does that advice mean, and what are the outcomes to be expected. And then relief, emotional relief. They want to know that at the end of the day, they're in good hands and that you will resolve their legal issue. So I think that was my 4 top kind of client experience points. I want to just take a step back and ask everyone to consider how does your company prioritize customer experience? What are your company's values in terms of client experience? Do they value them at all? And I understand that for a lot of people, they might not know what company values are. So I'll just kind of pause for a moment to give a slight description. They're also known as brand values, so it's kind of a bit interchangeable there. A company's values articulate the strategic priorities that your company has, or your principles or shared values, and how they will then direct your business strategy and then shape your company culture. They form an agreed code of conduct between all your staff about how you engage with each other internally, how you engage with industry, and then how you engage with your end clients. So that means just from top to bottom, everybody's aligned. I thought what I've done is I've taken a couple of companies that basically I thought gave great customer experience. Some of them are very Australian, some are international. So starting with Apple, I think what's really amazing about Apple is they have in every country, in every shop front, every product they've had, they've always been prioritizing the delivery of a consistent, positive customer experience. They have mapped out all their brand touch points, and they give such a strong brand and experience that basically they've driven a divide in the people. So their employees are really Apple people because they live and breathe Apple culture, Apple products, Apple everything. But then also as a consumer, we've been divided by a world and people who are Apple people and who are Android people. And there's a bit of a contention between the two. So, but I think what's really fantastic to look at Apple as an example is they have mapped out their entire customer journey. And I think that is a really important thing for everyone to consider. So, and also post-sale as well, I should point that out. So it's not just you buy the product and you leave. I mean, I think a number of us have received surveys from Apple asking how our experience was. So when I look at the audience, I'd like to ask a question for you to sit back and think, where does your client experience sit within the hierarchy of your company's values? This one is probably a little local for those not in Australia. We have a chain called Bunnings. It's not quite Walmart. It's something quite different. It's more of, how would you guys explain it? It's a hardware shop. It's a giant hardware shop. And they are known throughout Australia as having
with a sausage sizzle.
everyday people who are super engaging but are incredibly knowledgeable about whatever they're specialising in. And that's part, we're going to go back one. That's part of their client experience. But they also have a very clear customer promise, which is about delivering the lowest prices. So that's really articulated well. And
hey,
also
Justine, can I just jump in there to say that someone says part of their proposition is their sausage sizzle, their barbecue sausage sizzle. I just thought I'd throw that in.
No, definitely, definitely.
An experience point.
It is important. It is important, the sausage sizzle. And that's really their social and community interface, having a sausage sizzle. Oh, for those not in Australia, every Saturday they will have a sausage sizzle, which is very important, and give out free sausages in a bun with tomato sauce or barbecue. Again, that divides the nation. But just going back to one more point was that they are complete DIY experts in their field. They have people in store that will give you all the help you need. But then if you're online, they also have a huge wealth of online content for free. So I pose the questions to the audience to consider for themselves. Does your firm or your legal supplier group that you're with have a client promise? I mean, how would a client describe your staff to other people? And just think about how you deliver your expertise to your clients. Another one that might be a little more Australia/US centric is the shared workspace WeWork. Now, more than just an office space for hire, WeWork provides a B2B ecosystem for other companies to engage with. So when you come into WeWork, you're not just going, oh, here's my little set office that I'm hiring. They're giving you a whole network of other specialties to engage with right at your front door. But I think when it comes to WeWork, going back to Carl's point, from the experience that the client gets from walking in the front door, WeWork has created a space that's not just inviting and prioritised for its clients who are hiring the space. They've made it so that their clients want to bring their clients into that space because they've prioritised all the support systems and the support, all the business support that they have. So when looking at WeWork, have you considered the experience your client has walking through that front door to that boardroom where they're about to have the meeting? And in terms of your positioning with your client, are you able to connect them with other experts that can help them in other areas of their problem? So you're more of a trusted advisor than just a legal provider. And my last example is, again, contentious. Uber Eats. Now, I feel they have three different types of clients. They have the end customer, who's myself, who engages with them on an app, a simple, non-personal interface that's easy to use. We have the food provider who delivers the product, in essence, and they use the other end of the platform. But then we have almost an employee client who's the deliverer of the food. Now, having these three different areas, unfortunately, I would argue, and it's contentious, that Uber Eats can't 100% confirm that the package you get of food is going to be the quality experience that you're wanting. I mean, it maybe doesn't deliver on time, maybe the food got messed up, maybe the quality of the actual food is not what you were expecting. And so as a receiver of legal services, I would ask the audience, what mechanism do you have in place to monitor and ensure a quality client experience? So I'll throw to you there, Howard.
Yeah, so we've got another poll, Justine. So Fiona, could you, as our polling expert, so I think what we've got here, the last question should be industries. So how much can you learn from in terms of improving your client experience from other industries? So I think Justine has showed some examples from Uber Eats, from WeWork, and I think, Justine, from your point of view, you obviously have a relatively firm point of view on this. So it'll be interesting to see whether our workshop audience agree with your point of view or not, as it may be.
Yep.
So as we start to see that, should we go through to your
top tips? That'd be great. Look, so again, I want to give you all some sort of tangible tips or skills you can go away and use. What would I recommend as top tips? One, and I'm sure we're all going to be saying this, listen to your clients. I think it'd be really of value to everyone to undertake a perceptions audit. So to take a moment to understand what your clients are saying or experiencing with your firm, and interview your clients after their matter has been resolved. What was their experience firsthand? I would identify and map out client touch points. I think, yes, there's the digital, social, online experience, but how are people digesting and experiencing your thought leadership content? We've talked about this before. How are they engaging with your team members from the front door all the way to the boardroom and post? Your office space, and also your account management. I think we've all dealt with so many utilities providers that we've walked away from because it's just been such a god-awful experience. But also your legal documentation. Take a step back and think, is this legal documentation clear and engaging? Is it enjoyable to read, or is it really difficult? Quality control. What mechanisms do you have in place to ensure that your client is having a great experience? Review your firm or your organisation's cultural values. Do they include or address client experience? Develop a client promise. What is something you can ensure that every time you engage with a client, you will always be able to deliver? And also, again, consider your office space.
Great. Thanks, Justine. And we've got the results of our poll. I feel like I'm hosting the Eurovision Song Contest, minus the singing, of course. So it seems that our workshop participants agree with you, Justine, in that 92% of them.
I'm glad.
They can learn from other industries. So far, that has been very useful. So I think next we would like to introduce the delightful Mel Scott from Megaport. And Mel, the question that you're going to start to talk about is, do we know what our clients really want from us? So Mel, I'm going to try and drive for you as well. So if you need me to do anything, please yell.
Absolutely. We can go straight to that next slide. Really, I think we can all agree that some things never change when it comes to the delivery of a fantastic customer experience. Almost every client from B2B, B2C will want something delivered on time, under budget, and they're going to want it to be accurate, so that there's no negligence there. It's a solid, a sound piece of legal advice that they've paid for. I think that those fundamentals are and obviously have always been non-negotiable, but now they really are. They're just to get your foot in the door. It's the absolute, the fundamental, but also kind of the bare minimum. It's just expected that you will deliver what you said you would, and you'll do it in the way that you said it would, and it's not going to have any bill shock associated with it. So it's going to be hopefully under budget, or at least if there's a bit of a scope creep, there's been a discussion with the client through, so that there's none of that bill shock at the end there. Next slide. Thanks, Howard. So while some things never change, it's also not the same. I think what clients want from their legal providers and professional services has changed. Now, I can most certainly give my own experience, and I hope to do that throughout the next few minutes while I have the virtual microphone. But I also think that it is a matter of not necessarily taking my word for it, and that if anything, today might be a prompt to go and ask your own customers and clients. Justine mentioned a perceptions audit. You could absolutely even pick out just as simple and start with your top 5 clients, your top favorite clients, and send them a SurveyMonkey link. That's free. It doesn't take very long. You could also, take it as an opportunity to pick up the phone and say, look, hey, we just want to touch base, have a chat, and I really just want to get your feedback on some points here. So however you might want to do that, I would so encourage you to ask for that feedback and not be too frightened of doing that. And then, of course, listen and we want to take on board what we're hearing from our clients. It's certainly one thing to appear to tick a box to ask at the back end of a customer survey or perceptions audit, whatever it might be, but really having a genuine interest in taking that feedback and really doing something with it. And you might not like what you hear, but kind of keeping that open mind and being, kind of having that growth mindset, as they say, to how things have always been done doesn't mean that they have to be, what continues in the future. So there's that piece that I've put there around the empathy. And when you're asking your customer, some of these things you could really just frame from what's it like to be in their shoes? What are your biggest frustrations? What keeps you up at night? What are you struggling with the most at the moment? And the answers might surprise you, and they might be, something as simple as, I'm really having trouble explaining the legal advice back into the business to sales leaders. They're busy. They're not words people. They love graphs and they love numbers. And I'm just struggling translating that advice back into this particular section of the business so that we can influence the change that we want. And that's going to spark something for you that you may not have considered in how your legal advice is presented. And Justine mentioned, to think about the piece of paper, the email, whatever it might be that's being received, and just putting yourself in the customer's shoes there. Is that really kind of hitting the nail on the head for them? And is there anything else that you could do? And maybe it is a really simple fix to take that piece of communication and tailor it for the ultimate end user. And I think also knowing that that's going to change as well. And I'll certainly come to that, because there's such a trend in personalised experiences. So to round out that slide, some things never change, but also if you want to be a serious modern legal professional, you have to, I think, start to have that growth mindset and be open-minded to what else you can do that's above and beyond and surprising and delighting the customer, because that is the new normal now, in my experience.
Actually, can I just add to that? Oh, sorry, can I just add to that, Mel?
Yeah.
I think it's really, again, coming from different industries to the legal experience, I think what a real opportunity is that, all lawyers are dealing usually directly with their client. There really is that opportunity to personalise that experience, to really get to know the client. And, if one client's time poor, you can give them super short emails and say, here are the attachments, just read. Or, if there's someone who's very detailed orientated, you could create detailed orientated information packs, etc. But yeah, I think there's a real opportunity within the legal space to be very personalising with your end client.
Absolutely. And if that sounds particularly daunting, even creating, some buckets of, 2 or 3 buckets of clients and how they might like to receive the end product, and then tailoring them to that. And then over time, you iterate and you grow, and you might be able to do 5 variations of the advice or the end product, just depending on those customer profiles. So yeah, such a good point.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, of course. I think when I wanted to talk about what's changed and really, really drill down for the audience, for me, I look at 3 big areas. That's people, the tools, and the processes. When I look to people, there's 2 things I want to talk to here. And I think the first one is around the values of the people that you work with and that you employ to be your professional service providers, as speaking from myself as the customer. And for yourself as the business owner, the lawyer, it's about the people that you work with and that you employ, and I guess the person that you are as well, and also who you want to work with and the customers that you want to work with. There's absolutely no doubt that the world has really changed in the last 12 to 18 months around particular social issues, and where corporate would stay out of it and not have an opinion, it's not acceptable anymore. To be silent on particular issues is almost to be complicit. And I think that is a trend we will continue to see. I think of particular social issues like the Black Lives Matter movement. I think of marriage equality, and I think of all of the corporates that actually took a position and how that aligned with the customers that they were, like-minded and hoping to attract through taking a position, a values-based position. And I actually would go one step further, because I see it in my organisation and in others, that the board and then the procurement function are actually mandating that the suppliers that we work with have to meet certain criteria, and that they are values-based and social values-based criteria, and they are more progressive than they used to be. So as an example, the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Coca-Cola, just last week, he actually sent out an open letter to all external law firms, and he said, you have not done a great job in diversity and inclusion. I'm not seeing diversity in the lawyers that are doing work for Coca-Cola, and it's unacceptable, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. And he was pretty emotional in his language, and he put out very specific guidelines for any law firm that wants to do work with Coca-Cola, and that if they want to be considered, they need to hit these particular thresholds. Now, some law firms will see that and say, that's not for us. We're not going to be aligned, and we don't think that quotas or metrics are actually a way in which you progress a social issue. So that's not for us. And you know what? That's going to be okay. The Coca-Cola team would have many law firms to choose from, and that's going to weed out some of those that are not aligned on values. Another example is Carmel Mulhern. When she was the GC at Telstra, she actually required reporting from external law firms on how often they briefed female barristers on behalf of Telstra. So they wanted the breakdown of how many matters were briefed out, and then what percentage of that was that gender diversity as well. So I think increasingly we will see that personal values will be affecting who we buy from and what they stand for. And, from a personal experience, I absolutely make decisions based on the type of companies I want to be aligned with. And that won't necessarily work for those companies. They may not want to work with me, and that's okay, because that's not going to be that fit. But the values-based proposition is one that I would really start to think about. And also from an employee perspective, starting to get, younger generations into the workforce who are looking to align themselves with companies and businesses that share their values in that way. So, yeah, there's a lot to that. And it's just one person's opinion, but something I wanted to share when we look at what's changed in terms of that people aspect. And I have to mention the long lunch. I think, again, one person's opinion here, but I personally don't have the time to spend with you from 12 p.m. till 5 p.m. on a Friday. I'm going to have a meeting at 3 o'clock back in the office or on Zoom at 4. We're a global business. So when I finish my Friday, my UK team are waking up and they still need me to be pretty coherent. So unfortunately, the times have changed. And you know what, that's kind of okay, because I actually love a coffee. I'd love to have a coffee catch up, and that's kind of how I love to do that one-on-one. But again, that's a personalized thing. But I think we can all see that there's catching up once a quarter, once a year for the long boozy lunch might have had its heyday, maybe not, but I'd like to do a poll on that actually. Sorry, just one backup, Howard. There we go. I've mentioned this a few times, but the idea of bespoke and personalised events might be something to think about. And I'll call out Law Squared here as an excellent example of doing that. When they put on an event, the experience from receiving your invitation to the gift box that's there, to the people that are around a small intimate dinner. I've been able to go to one of those events and just found it to be quite remarkable. It was a very different experience, followed up by, at the end, it was kind of a follow-up to say thank you. It was very tailored and personalised as well. So something to think about how to do things a little differently. And of course, the good old CLE, I get invited to a multitude of them, especially at this time of the year, where all of the law firms want the in-house counsel to come in and kind of keep that connection and maybe drum up a little bit more business, whatever it might be. But I really struggle with those events because they're so often just the black letter law. And here's the change to Modern Slavery Act. There you go. See you later. Let's have a sandwich. But I need more than that to justify going into the city or logging in for an hour to the webinar. Let's have a talk about how that actually affects the business and what tools you've seen other businesses do to buy in influence from the board or whatever it might be. So just some thoughts there. When we look to the tools piece of what's changed, there's no denying that technology is absolutely a game changer and a tool that can be used to enhance the delivery of client services. And I don't think that it's a threat. I certainly am not someone who thinks that the robots are going to replace us. That's not it at all. I would say that technology can enhance and simplify your client's experience, your experience as a lawyer, and it gives you more time back to spend with your clients as well. So some examples I have there, and that first one's a really real one for me at the moment. We're going through the process of actually transferring all of our trademark work from a very traditional provider to a startup that has an absolutely awesome technology platform that allows for real transparency of all of my trademark information, and that's quite a lot. And we hadn't seen something like that in the market before. So when we were pitched in the demo, it was almost too good to be true, because previously there was that barrier between me and my information, and now I can log on, my marketing team can log on, it's all there, it's real time, and it's got some fantastic features that are actually going to justify a move away from the incumbent, which is kind of a big deal. So that particular platform is called Markster, and anyone online who's in-house or has quite a large trademark portfolio, I would recommend checking that out because they're pretty cool and disruptive. And of course, that customer to firm interface, is there something that you can do to get it out of email? Can we get out of email for instructions and have something that we log into so we can talk to you in one place where the matter and the conversation back and forth is transparent as well? I've seen some examples of that, but I think there's more work in that space to be considered for sure. And process, that last of the three in terms of the buckets of what's changed, the process of customer service from end to end. I think that a lot of law firms and lawyers could really do a better job of onboarding the customer and doing so and asking questions in a way that tailors a personalised service. So why not, receive an email? It could be a simple Survey Monkey again, or a Google form that asks you, how do you like to receive your advice? When do you like to be communicated? Do you want a text? Do you want an email? If I have to call you, what time is best? I was mentioning in our prep workshop to Howard that I work with law firms around the world, including the US, and I often wake up to a missed call at 2 a.m. my time to one of our counsel in San Francisco. And it just baffles me that they forget that I'm asleep then and I'm in Australia. And I'm not going to pick up at 2 a.m. I'm so sorry. It's a jarring reminder of the fact that they're just not thinking necessarily of me. And it's okay, but it's something that could be certainly a little more, a little bit more refined. And I mentioned Calendly there as well. It's such a great tool to set up engagements and to set up appointments where the customer who's making the appointment has such a great visibility of the times that are available, and Calendly will kind of mesh two calendars, yours and theirs, and come up with times that work for both. So I think that's a great one, and I've used that before, and I think it's just really quite great. And there's a great freemium version as well that you could check out. Getting those SMS reminders before an appointment. I mean, it works for my nail technician. Could it work for my lawyer? Why not? Always on our phones. So that's going to be a personalised approach, but something to think about. And of course, that last piece, back to the end product, what you're actually receiving. So often I receive a fantastic piece of legal advice that's just gone through all the nuts and bolts of the law, the case law, the developments. It's so great, but it doesn't answer my question. It doesn't tell me what I should do, or at least 2 or 3 options of what might be next, what they might recommend. You know, some lawyers just get everything to that end piece, and they can't quite commit to the practical, pragmatic solution. And I see it often, and it surprises me, because I know that there's been a lot of talk about understanding what in-house in particular are looking for, but it still seems I have to push for that. Okay, but what next? What would you suggest is the next step? I might not necessarily take it on board. There might be other contexts you don't know about, but can we at least have a stab at being practical and getting, bridging that gap between me and then my client? Something I've seen work really well is a traffic light system, kind of a red, orange, green. Here's some issues to think about, but they're non-issues really. Green, go ahead. Here are the 2 red light things that they're really something that you should think about. And here's the stuff in the middle that could be a little risky, but you take that as you need to with your risk appetite. So that's something I've seen work really well, and I can cut and paste that and send it back to the CEO or CFO, whoever it might be. To finish off, in the same vein that Justine did, just a few practical tips to take away and to think about. Absolutely think about your onboarding experience from the customer's point of view. What's it like when they receive that letter of engagement, and it's 5 to 10 pages long, and it's everything's in there, but it's all a bit dry. How could that be something that's gone from our MRI machine to the SS Rochester and is a little bit more engaging, perhaps? Thinking about doing a mystery shopper or a secret shopper, as Carl suggested. Customer surveys are, the best way to get that feedback. There's no denying asking. And of course, I've said a lot in here. We've got a lot in this presentation, and I just want to encourage you not to necessarily feel that overwhelmed, because I know we are throwing a lot at you, but it's okay to just take it one step at a time. Just focus on one area at a time, and just iterate over time as well. So yeah, despite everything that we're trying to give you some excellent value today, take a breath, try not to feel too overwhelmed, and just eat that elephant one step at a time. Done is better than perfect, as I've put there. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Mel. So I'm going to keep us moving along at pace, because we've actually got a couple of other things to speak to. And I think, the topic is so vast, we could actually be talking for the next 90 minutes. So we're not going to overrun. But I think what we wanted to do is just quickly talk about the notion that COVID has absolutely become the new normal. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's changed the way we live and work. And I think it has presented this amazing opportunity to think about what that means in terms of transformation. And I think I've sort of adapted this framework here from McKinsey, that there's sort of 4, components to the notion of, how customers are being asked to consider this changing world. And I think it's this notion that, the world has definitely changed. And I think as Mel has touched on, we are vastly in a vastly different world now. Whereas I think, the conversation that Mel was starting to have around the importance of values-based businesses and that forming part of decision-making, I think is something that has absolutely sort of been spurred on from the last sort of 12 to 18 months. The notion that, COVID has shown all of us that we need to be prepared for change, and this notion that change is almost now the sort of normal world that we all live in. So how do we plan for that change, and this notion of starting to build some agility in, and I think the notion of how also do we start to think about our employees? And I think Carl will touch on this in a little bit later as well, where we start to think about those internal stakeholders as playing a crucial role in terms of driving superior client experience. And then it's not just about those external, end customers, but it's as much as about those internal ones as well. So I think, Fiona, if you could just put the next poll up. I think what I just wanted to ask everyone who's following this at home is, how has your company adapted its customer experience following COVID? There may be some companies that haven't changed anything. I think we've started to put here that from some of the things that Justine was saying, is your companies now starting to think about the role that digital channels may play in terms of the customer experience? And then I think finally, as I think Mel was starting to discuss in her session, the experience that she expects from those firms that are working with her is to start to consider how she wants to be worked with. And that notion of, the long lunch is dead, think about, how we can deliver that experience in sort of the ways that your clients want is, I guess, the other big learning that we've been talking about as a part of this session. So I think when we look at the poll results here, it seems that middle one is absolutely. So 74% of the people that are voting have said that they now are starting to consider digital channels. 13% have done nothing and 13% have really changed. So that's interesting to see a sort of very normal bell-shaped curve in terms of our data. So just finally, in terms of the tips from addressing customer experience in a post-COVID world, this notion of moments of surprise and delight, and I think Carl will touch on this in the next session that he talks about, but this notion is incredibly important now to people in a post-COVID world. The notion of thinking about care and concern, as Mel discussed in detail, thinking about how you talk to your customers in the channel and time that suits them, not you. And then finally, the notion of, how can we all start to develop a greater agile capability to help address this sort of ever-changing world. Mm-hmm. So that's our quick sort of COVID customer experience thoughts in less than 5 minutes. Mr. Carl White, I'm going to now introduce you to the people from all around the world that are watching our session.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, great to be with you. And amazing points from all the other speakers. I'll try and reflect on some of those points as we go through this topic and what I've got to tell you about. Let's just get straight into it. I'm conscious of time as well. So look, just to revisit, what we mean by client experience again, just bringing it back to basics. Any moment where your firm's service promise is made or broken, which is a point we've made throughout the session so far. So, what that means is we really have to try and look and sound and feel remarkable at every touch point with clients. We've made the point that your clients are actually customers, just like you, of other business and services. And we all understand what good service looks like and feels like, and we want more of it. And we're bringing those service world expectations to the legal environment. So, so what's the impact of that then on a law firm? And here's one that CX Law has worked with, Moores in Melbourne, and they were squaring up to this concept of client experience in really practical ways. And one of the first conversations that took place here was, what does convenience for the client actually look like and sound like? And in fact, when we say we're a values-driven law firm, well, how do we actually bring that to life at every point in the interaction, right from the outset of the relationship all the way through the matter? And what was interesting was that in having that conversation with the entire team, this is a firm of over 100 people now, was that there was not a lot of consensus around what that looks like and sounds like, and in fact there wasn't a lot of understanding around the firm's values and how that ought to look and the behaviours that ought to be demonstrated and the conversations that therefore ought to be played out. So when you show a law firm its own service promise or its own brand statement or whatever, it's fascinating what can occur, because very few people in that firm seeing that statement will recognize their own. So it begs the question: if we don't have a service promise in the first place, like Justine said, or we don't recognize our own, how on earth are we actually going to bring that to life at every point for ourselves as operators and with and for our clients? So, that really is a fundamental point here around client experience, and in making that a key differentiator is to start that conversation. So let's have a look, if we could move to the next slide. Depending on how well we actually then bring that service promise to life, or that service statement to life, then you're going to have different, your clients are going to have different responses. And there's a range of them there. And this is bringing in the Net Promoter Score from, across industries now into law. Language that we should actually be, increasingly familiar with: Net Promoter Score, turning clients into promoters. It's no longer satisfactory just to think about client satisfaction. If you're focused on satisfaction, your business is already going backwards. So it's about, how can we actually now be remarkable? Knowing that being remarkable doesn't necessarily mean we have to have the latest whiz-bang technology or even do hugely innovative things. It might just be focusing on the plus ones, the 1%ers, the marginal gains that make a huge difference when you add them up, can add up to being a promoter. What do we mean by promoter? Well, it could be the fonts, hey, it could be that, but actually it could be more subtle. It could be this, it could sound like this. That's it. In fact, I sometimes describe client experience as a sum total of all of those sounds. It's as simple as that. How often can we make our clients and even our co-workers go, that was a better conversation than I thought it would be. That was a better phone call than I thought it was. That was a better document than I imagined it would be. Oh, that actually made my day, right? And the thing here is, if you're the right legal organization to service a client, you shouldn't leave a client in any doubt if they're making first contact with you, for instance. There shouldn't be a reason why they go to another law firm and kind of go, oh, let me check over there. You should make it possible for them to have the next conversation. Don't leave them giving you that Simon Cowell look, as likely to or not. And let's try not to have that Wolverine reaction as well. And it's so interesting when you're working with firms and organizations, how often they make the client go, ouch. They're their own competitor. They're scoring own goals and they don't even realize they're doing it. And actually, their golden opportunity is to improve right there. So if you could just bring up the next pop-up, Howard, we can score this out of 10. It's a simple scale and that's its strength. We want to get to a 10. 7 and 8 isn't good enough. And it's surprising how often we can be so inconvenient that we actually annoy our clients. So make the goal now, and it is a big, hairy, audacious goal, turning your clients into promoters. Talk in terms of client delight. Talk in terms of wow. Don't just talk in terms of satisfaction or delivering the legal result, because it won't deliver really in the end, where you want to be with your business any longer if you don't talk in those terms. Set that challenge. Right, what's next, Howard? Thank you. All right. So, let's look at how all of that plays out. So this isn't quite a customer journey map. It's a customer journey. It's a generic journey from, kind of first touch points all the way through to billing. I wouldn't describe it as a customer journey map. It would need several more levels for that. But isn't that interesting? Look at all of those touch points running across the journey there. And imagine all of those opportunities now to improve across all of those touch points. So, boy, the experiences we've had, from the personal injury firm, the major personal injury firm in Australia that injures its clients because the glass door is too heavy when you're walking into reception and the sofa seating is too low to actually sit comfortably. This is a personal injury firm. It's not there to injure its own clients, right? Through to, picking up the phone with, for instance, what? We've heard that from lawyers and legal assistants. Or if I was a lawyer, Carl White. Through to the better version, which is, hello, is that Howard? Yes, it's Howard. Hi, Howard, I'm Carl. I'm a lawyer here in the specialist family law team. I understand you're calling about, right? Can you hear the difference? And more importantly, can you feel the difference? To the firm that sends a letter, this is kind of welcoming and onboarding, sends a letter to its clients. saying, we'd rather not have you bring your children to the first appointment with our law firm, ... read the rest of the letter. Can you imagine? And this is a well-intentioned law firm wanting to get service right. But when you start to, as Justine said, audit the perception points, and you start looking at all of those, points of communication and interaction, you find letters like that. Don't bring your kids. It's going to disturb the conversation we're having. Well, that might be the case, but how do we rephrase that? Through to then concierging the client through these touch points. Today, it's about care beyond the legal advice. And if you can work with that notion, if you can actually think we're in hospitality as much as we're in law, then really good things are going to happen. And that doesn't mean that you'll now have to spend, 6 hours with a client rather than the 10 minutes you were spending. It's about an intelligent use of that understanding and that concept. We've worked with firms that kind of go, yeah, we end well, they called it the final shebang, and what they realized was that they end with a final whimper. It's more of a whimper than a bang. Look at loyalty, look at the concept of aftercare there. Which law firm can honestly say it has an aftercare approach so that, the bill is finalized, it's well presented, there's a conversation, there's another conversation after that is about, continuing to be helpful if that's appropriate. Maybe, part of that is cross-selling services. Part of that is doing an after-action review, perhaps, or, asking for feedback. And doing this, checking time, yeah, good. Doing this by design and not by accident. So you're going to be because, everyone here, is probably part of a very successful law firm. So it's not like we're getting all of this wrong. There are just real gems in here when you start unpacking it and unpacking it together with your team. And this is where the team engagement piece comes in, because it unlocks all of that employee engagement, all of that latent energy and all of those ideas that, your legal assistant, your receptionist and your lawyer and your accountant and everything actually has. They know what some of those good ideas are already. And of course, like others have said on this, we want to also speak to our clients. And how funny is it that we can focus on client experience and actually never talk about the client? So we need to bring the client into this conversation. And in fact, talking about client interviews, yes, we can talk about, and of course we want to, what your goal is for your organization, the kind of commercial acumen and all of those aspects. But actually, when you present your client, so let's say it's a business-to-business client, with this journey map, and you say, look, let's have a conversation about the highs and lows together of working with us. That's a really fascinating conversation. And it's a very different conversation than your traditional client interviews when you actually start to focus on the service experience all the way through there. So we're looking for hotspots. We're looking for hotspots and we're looking for opportunities. We're looking for both those things from the client's perspective, but also from the employee perspective, because this is about client experience, CX, employee experience, EX, and making it convenient to receive and deliver from, for all parties. And that's where the magic is in focusing on client experience.
Carl, could I just ask one quick question? Just because I think one thing that's just popped into my mind that probably quite a few people might be considering is we've obviously talked a lot about sort of requesting feedback from clients. And could you just talk about how would you suggest firms should react if they're given negative feedback?
Well, actually,
because positive feedback is somewhat easier, right? Like, because if it's positive, everyone's like, okay, great, no problems, happy days. But can you just talk about your thoughts around like how to cope with negative feedback from your clients?
Yeah, I'd love to relate a story. There's not much time. Suffice to say that that goes to the origin story of CX and law. It was me trying to give feedback to my UK law firm I was using, personal services I was using, and the reaction was, we don't have anyone here who deals with feedback, but we do have a partner who deals with complaints, was the response from the receptionist when I tried to give feedback to this law firm. And that is the origin story of CX and law. right? So it's not business, but it's personal. Yeah. Basically, there's all sorts of different ways in which we can encourage feedback. Surveys are a part of the story, but they're not going to be relevant to all types of clients, I would argue. We all have survey fatigue as well. So we need to think really carefully about the kind of use cases for, surveys. There is a place for them though, and I would say it should be part of the suite of, understanding client sentiment. Actually queuing that up when we're welcoming and onboarding clients to say, look, we're obviously wanting to achieve this legal result, but actually there will be a moment at the end of working together, when we come to the end of this, where, we'll ask you how it was. And you're actually queuing up, a nice practical conversation you might have at the end of the matter. So, you're getting kind of relationship feedback and you're able to turn that into a conversation at the end of a matter. Now, who delivers that conversation needs to be thought about. So it might not be the lawyer who carries of the matter, for instance. And then, of course, there are more structured client interviews of the type we've spoken about, and I've made reference to there, that ought to be a part of, what's our client's perspective. The other thing that we do with our firms as well is create client advisory boards, and we make key clients an absolute inherent part of designing the experience and working on this journey map with members of staff. And there's gold dust right there. So there's different ways, and I could talk more.
Thank you. That's really practical for those people who are following.
So just bringing up a few of the pop-ups on here, and then we'll move through. So I want to get some time for questions at the end with everyone. So, yes, what are we trying to do? Seamless and impressive, early stages of contact. Receptionists are director of your first impression. They're more important than any lawyer at that point in the conversation. The lawyer's job is to support the receptionist, almost not the other way around. This is a cultural point as well. Supported and concierging the client through these touch points. And let's not forget a remarkable and impressive final impression as well, the recency effect. How was the last impression? And what we're trying to do here, it's that Dave Brailsford, UK cycling coach, marginal gains. Yes, there could be some amazing innovations here. Yes, we can use technology to enable the client experience. But on one level, if you just want to get the conversation started with your team, with your practice, with your firm, then it's like, okay, what are the dumb things we do? What are the better things we could do? What are the 1%ers that would actually, be noticed by our clients? And noticed by us as the deliverers of that service as well. It's going to make it easier for us. We must always join those two things. Yeah. All right. Next slide. Yeah, so look, probably nailed this one, but we need to look at it from the client's perspective. We've spoken a little bit about how we might do that, throwing in an additional tool of mystery shopping, so being, posing as clients to get your objective data. But these are just some of the expectations a prospective client might have of first contact. And an amazing conversation you can have with your team right now is, when a client first makes contact with us, what would we hope they'll receive? When they speak to reception, speak to the assistant, speak to the lawyer, what's our aspiration? What do we hope they receive? And just get that down as a list, as a criteria. So we want to look at it from the client's perspective. And Howard, if we could move to the next slide. We also need to work with our teams. So when I first started out in law, I worked for Ashurst in around kind of 2002 in the UK. And as with many law firms, and as is still the case, it was so hard to put, get this, lawyers, and please banish this phrase, non-lawyers, we don't like that phrase anymore, right, into one room to focus on this stuff. Now, remember that theatre production. They were all actors on that stage. We're all games makers of the experience. We all have a part to play in this. The client must be in everyone's line of sight. And what an amazing opportunity to bring everyone together to start this conversation, to engage with people, to focus on a business outcome of amazing client experience. And you would be amazed at what happens when you get your people together, gathered around this central focus of the client experience. And here's how it should look. Okay, it might not look quite like that. That might be now on Zoom and using tools like Miro or Mural or other such digital tools that we're now using to bring it to life. The key thing is, do it. Even if it's a half-hour conversation with your team, just to get it started, to get some ideas flowing. More often than not, it does need good facilitation, though, which is why we exist. So here what they're doing is they're journey mapping and so on, and the result of that is a little bit on the slide. So the top of this slide is an actual new and enhanced law firm client journey. It's deliberately small because I don't want you to see all the nitty-gritty details from this, but this is a firm that's completely gone through their entire client journey. They're a private client firm and a commercial firm. And, in the work we do, we kind of go, yeah, lawyers go, oh, it's ever so different around here. How we do things over here is so different to how we do things over here. That's what we get often. So it's about, no, okay, yes, it might be, there's nuances, but actually, what we need to create is a service blueprint for your firm, a service journey for your firm, something, again, like your promise, that you can all kind of follow and abide by design. And yes, of course, it's going to be nuanced depending on your practice area. So this is an example. It's amazing. You don't often see this, a law firm creating a client journey like this, an enhanced version 2, which now they're working toward, all of the uplifts that they haven't yet built in, some of them they have, and bringing that to life. Every firm should have one of these. It does require some thought and expertise. So this is actually the result. So working with a Melbourne law firm, working just on first contact with clients. So firms will often kind of go, right, so can we just focus on one part of the client journey, make that more convenient, make that easier to deliver, as a group of operators. Once we've proven the business case there, we'll then start to unpack the entire client journey and work on the overall thing. So this is part of the strategy, is kind of maybe just focus on one part of the journey first. Maybe it's first contact and turning inquiries or potential work into instructions. So through all the mystery shopping and all the work we did, only this is the improved result, but the original result was only 3 out of 10 inquiries, work that could be secured, was being secured. After focusing on those first touch points, having a better conversation with potential clients and sorting out some of the process points so it's more client convenient, this firm changed that number from kind of 3 in 10 converting into work to 7 in 10 inquiries converting into work, and they had their most profitable year in 5, only by focusing on that part of the journey. So nothing to me kind of really illustrates, commercially speaking, what can happen even if you just focus on one part of that journey, right? Okay, next. All right, so Moores, this is the CEO who was speaking yesterday. She's just phenomenal, from Moores, Tessa. And, I love this because what she's connecting here in this quote is, again, CX equals EX. You can't have an amazing client experience without at least focusing on an equally good, if not amazing, employee experience. It's about enhancing and delivering value into both those facets of your organization. CX starts with your people. They're at the heart of the matter. Getting there now, almost there. So my tip slide is more of a kind of a bumper sticker. So hovering over this, some of the things I said, right? So we need to activate your staff. We need to start the conversation, using some insight. We want to activate your clients. We want to understand what the world looks like from their point of view. We want to activate leaders. You want to get your train on the track. Then together, importantly, you design the experience. Look for the plus ones and also look for the big, amazing innovations. But normally it's about the plus ones, right? Then, really and only then, think about how do we train? How do we build those capabilities? How do we create dialogue guides and resources and a playbook to make sure that, like an elastic band, everything doesn't flip back to where it was, 8 months ago. So activate, design, and embed. And that was something that was really substantiated through the work as a distinguished fellow that I did with the CLI. This kind of framework, this strategy was substantiated. I think that might be it.
Thanks, Carl. No, that was amazing. So what I might do is I I think we're gonna jump this question because I want to make sure that I just have time for some final remarks from Justine and Mel and Carl. So I think, Mel, I'm going to come to you first. Can we just go back to so in terms of your top tip to everyone who's been watching, and I know it's been a very talking heavy 90 minutes for those of us that have been following. Thank you. We've tried to cover a lot of ground in this session. So thank you for bearing with us. And I think we've had lots of interesting things to say. But I think, Mel, could you just talk about one of the things that you touched on in your first presentation around this client touchpoint notion?
That one's not my tip, but I can take it.
It is now. No, okay. Well, if you want to give another top tip now, please do it.
The one I had, and maybe it's the last one to finish on, but essentially to just take incremental steps. Carl talks about the 1%. Yeah. And done is better than not done at all. So try to just not be too overwhelmed with how do I fundamentally shift my entire client's experience today, and just paring that back and taking it one step at a time.
Right. And so your top tip is more around, in terms of eating the elephant, start with a bite.
That's it. I'd say so, yeah.
Great. And then, there we go. We did have it there as well.
That's the one.
Justine?
Well, mine was mapping out all the touch points, I feel.
Oh, that's right. They're around the way.
I'd also like, if I was going to pair that with something that Mel had said earlier, was about personalizing the client experience. I think, we in the legal sphere, in the legal engagement, you have got so much opportunity to personalize that experience, to really, really take a moment to consider how best to engage with your client. How do they want to receive the information? So, 2 points, mapping out customer, engagement points, and consider your client about personalizing their experience.
Great. And then, Carl, what's your top tip for everyone that's been there?
My top tip, you may not be surprised to hear about, is, again, think about how you approach this as one firm, as one business, with all the different roles and functions. And it's something that actually Apple would probably tell you to do as well, because they talk about this being an all-around mandate. Everyone is involved in bringing an amazing service to life. So that's really the secret ingredient, and that would be my tip. Get that conversation started and work together as a team.
Amazing. And then I think the other one that I just wanted to, highlight is something that, I think Mel and Justine and Carl have all touched on, but also this notion of really focusing on working to create these moments of surprise and delight. I think for me, when I start thinking about client experience, I love this term, seamless serendipity. And so I think I'd sort of leave that as a sort of thought for those people around how can you make these appearances or these notions of client experience appear seamless through these serendipitous moments where this magic just happens. And I think, when we talk about Mel's example at the beginning and what was, tremendous client experience from her point of view, it was something that just happened behind the scenes. And this seemingly serendipitous magic happens where this brand just happens to be in her Instagram feed, at 7 p.m. when she's sitting down to have a glass of wine, when she's maybe quickly glancing at her phone. And it's those sort of serendipitous moments that I think we want to try and consider, to Carl's point, when you start thinking about mapping those points of your client's journey and across that whole interaction and the way that those clients interact with you. And so I think in the spirit of hopefully offering client experience for those people that have been watching this session, we have given everyone the chance to vote in one final poll. Now, this has been a poll that we have written, so it is, of course, biased towards the results. But nonetheless, we thought it would be interesting to ask those people who are watching this session to give us some feedback around how excellent our session has been. So you can either tell us our session was good, you can tell us our session was very good, or finally, if you want to be very celebratory, you could tell us that our session has been the best of the conference so far. So look, I think from our point of view, hopefully it's a little bit of fun, but I think on behalf of CLI and Outma, while the voting happens, I just wanted to thank Mel, Justine and Carl for their time today. Thank you so much for participating. It's been an incredibly talkative session. There's been so much content that I think we could talk about. And I think that's it from us. And you'll see that the voting has come in. 51% have said that we were very good. So well done. Well done to our panel. Thank you for all those people who've given us their feedback.
That's great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.